Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Karen. So this morning, I am going to just do a quick live session about some of the nuts and bolts things that came up when I was starting my business. Some of the non-sexy, not very exciting types of things that you do have to deal with when you are starting a business. Now, the reason that I am talking about these things is not because I think they are one of the most exciting things, but because a lot of times they are some of the things that people might use as kind of almost as an excuse, or that can just overwhelm people, that might keep them from taking action and thinking that it's this big ordeal, these things that you have to do. And that's just not the case. So what I wanted to do was just outline some of those basic things that you do have to think about that are kind of boring, but they are some of those things that you do have to do to make sure that you are being responsible, have as much security as possible, and just have things taken care of. And the other thing is that when you do take care of some of these little nuts and bolts, some of these things that you do have to take care of to be responsible, what it allows you to do is just know that these things are taken care of and you don't have to worry about them. And what that allows you to do is just kind of have those cognitive resources free to work on some of those other more exciting things when it comes to starting a business, whether that be a service-based business, private practice, something like that, or whether that be selling products or services online, which is what I do. So the first couple things I wanted to bring up, because the thing is that what happened when I started my business, and this may have happened to some other people as well, or may be happening to you if you are thinking about going out on your own, or at least having something on the side in addition to your full-time job that you have right now, is that a lot of people in an attempt to kind of protect you, or just, again, keep you safe, or just because they don't know, and they might be concerned about you, they might, care about you, or they might have their own hangups about things. What they do is sometimes project their worries onto you, and they might have some objections to what you're doing and be asking you certain questions that maybe you've never thought of, or you're not sure if you know the answer to. And when they bring them up, you're like, wait a minute, maybe I do have to worry about that. So let me go through a couple of those things, just some of the basic things that I'm going to talk about. Now, again, I am not an insurance agent. I'm not a financial analyst or an accountant. So keep those things in mind. I'm going to tell you what I did and direct you to some resources, but I'm not going to claim to be somebody with specific training in any of those things. I'm simply a person who has had to utilize a lot of those services and work through some of the things that involve working with some of those people. So I'm going to share what I did and what some other people have done that I know, and just some things that you want to think about, and direct you to some resources. And feel free to ask questions and if you want some additional resources. So one of the first things that I had to think about, and I actually thought about this when I started, I do technically have a private practice. I'm not seeing clients right now because I'm focusing on my business online and my continuing education programs. However, one of the things that I had to think about was, how do I establish my business, and what business structure do I need to have? And so some of the first things that I had to do was figure out, how do I actually establish my business, and which one is the right thing for me? So there are a bunch of different types of businesses, and there are some different resources that you can go to in your town that will figure out which one is right for you. I can't tell you which one is right for you because I don't know your unique situation, but I can tell you what I did and where to go. So one of the first things that I had to figure out was, do I want to operate as a sole proprietor? Do I want to form an LLC? Do I want an S Corp, or some other type of business structure? So what I ended up doing for my business and for my private practice for the first couple of years was just operate as a sole proprietor. And that meant when I would claim my taxes, I would just do it under my Social Security number, under my income, so that I didn't actually have to file any formal paperwork for that in order to operate as a sole proprietor. And that just basically meant that I was a freelancer. So I could see private clients. I could, again, sell products and services. And I just had to make sure I kept track of everything and claimed it when I went and talked to my accountant at the end of the year. Now, some people will say that, yes, you should probably register. I was just providing those services under my name. I didn't actually register. That is something that you can do. But some people choose to register their business before they start actually providing any type of service or sell something. For me, what I wanted to do was I wanted to test out a couple ideas to see what worked, because that helped me to gather more information about what structure to pick when I did actually form a formal business structure. But the advice that I got was that from an accounting standpoint, that it was still fine for me to operate as a sole proprietor. So that's what I did. And the reason that I did that was because it was a way for me to just move forward and take action without having to do a lot of paperwork. Now, that being said, there's nothing wrong with establishing a business before you start anything. The thing is that you don't want to just like hem and haw for months and months and months. Just go get it taken care of, figure something out, and know that you can always change it later. What I ended up doing just last year, so again, I started in 2015, and then it was 2018 when I formally formed a single person LLC. And so what I did was that I had some conversations with the Small Business Bureau. There's usually some type of small business support organization for a lot of different communities. I also talked to a SCORE mentor to guide me through some of these things. And I was having those conversations early on when I had decided to stay a sole proprietor. But what I ended up doing was eventually when I decided I wanted to formally create an official business, I did go and find a business attorney, and then I talked to an accountant, and between the two of them, they helped me through the paperwork that I needed to file in order to create an LLC and figure out which type of structure was best for me. I had to talk to the lawyer because there are certain things that you have to do from a paperwork standpoint. And then I talked to the accountant because a lot of times they can guide you in, based on your structure, what's going to be more cost effective for you from based on what kind of services you're providing and how you run your business. So I actually got their names, both of those people. I got referrals from the Small Business Association in my town. So they were the ones that actually helped refer me on and find those people. And it really just took a couple meetings. Again, lawyers, depends where you live. In my town, it's like you can get somebody for like $200 an hour. You can get somebody for like $500 an hour. And then in bigger cities, obviously it can be more than that. In smaller cities, it can be less. So again, there's a big range, but it does take a couple meetings with both. I want to say, I don't know, all in maybe $1,000 or so with all the meetings, maybe a little bit less. And then there was some paperwork. So again, and that's another reason why I wanted to figure out what my structure was first, or how I wanted to run my business first before I decided to do that. So again, that doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be something where you're like, oh my gosh, should I do it? Should I not? If you get an opportunity to sell a product, provide a service, you can operate as a freelancer. You just have to do it under your name when you claim it on your taxes. If you're not sure if there's something different, I know that in certain states there are different laws about operating as a sole proprietor. That is how it is in my state. So if you're not sure, and you're thinking that you might want to be providing some type of services, I would go and start talking to whatever small business association is available in your town right now, so that if you do need to file anything formal for operating as a sole proprietor, that you can do that. And sometimes that can be less extensive than the other structures. So that was the first thing I had to figure out. The other thing was liability insurance and business insurance. So this is another thing that you want to do in order to stay protected. What I did when I first started seeing private clients is that I did have liability insurance through my employer, but not as a private practitioner. So I had to make sure, obviously, that my state license was up to date and all of that. And what I also did was I just went, and I want to say there's Mercer, I want to say it's HPSO or HSPO. There's two, or there's a couple different options. It's really easy. You can get liability insurance immediately. Like you pay for it and then they send you your certificate. So I would recommend getting professional liability insurance and keeping that up to date if you're providing services. It's really easy. It's like mine was maybe a little over $100 a year. So again, not something you need to kind of worry about and stress about. Just go do it, get it taken care of. So that's the second thing. So number one, business structure. Number two, liability insurance. And then number three, the other types of insurance. So if you are operating under a business structure, there are certain things that you might need to have from an insurance standpoint, especially if you have a physical location. I did not, all I had was liability insurance the first couple of years. I did not get any other type of business insurance until I formed an LLC. So I was okay. Some other people might not choose to assume that much risk. That was what was comfortable for me, and that was what was okay based on the state guidelines in the state that I work, where I'm in Illinois. But it wasn't something that I did before I was selling products and services. I got insurance when I formally formed an LLC. So again, it wasn't something that I obsessed about. It wasn't something that I let prevent me from moving forward with my business and the services I was offering. When people asked if I was available, I would provide the services, but I didn't have that formal insurance until I formed that structure. Now, with professional liability insurance, I would not recommend, like, don't see private clients unless you have professional liability insurance, but the other types of business insurance are a little bit different. So if you have questions about what you need, again, those would be great questions to ask your small business association because they can recommend that. And so what we did was we just had a couple meetings with our insurance agent where we get our car insurance and homeowners insurance, and they just added it to our policy, and it was pretty easy, something that we figured out in a couple meetings. So first three things, again, business structure, professional liability insurance. Again, get the liability insurance before you do anything. It's really easy. And then with the other types of insurance, you might have some more flexibility on that, but just, again, have it as something on your list. All right, the final type of insurance I want to talk about today. Again, I know super exciting content, but something that you need to keep in mind is health insurance. Now, this was something that I had a really, really good insurance package when I was working for the school systems. Like, it was awesome. My husband works for an insurance company, and I had better insurance than he did. So it was really hard to let that go. What I did was that I scaled back to part-time. And so I was working enough that I still qualified for insurance. I did have to pay a little bit more. I think when I went down to 80%, I had to pay a little bit, get some taken out of my paycheck in order to cover the fact that I was only working 80%. But it was still more cost effective. So that's what I did. And then the next year I went down to 50%, and you have to be working 60% to get insurance. So I had to go on my husband's health insurance. So if you have a spouse, that is obviously your first option, is that you can go on their insurance. What I did was that I was still working at the school district, still getting some salary from there, but I just lost my insurance. So there was kind of a gradual transition out, where it wasn't like I completely pulled the rug out from under me. I had some salary. I just didn't get the insurance from there while I was working on building up my business that second year that I scaled back to part-time. So it was nice to be able to gradually pull away those layers of, those things that made me feel like I had security. However, again, it was something that I had to think about. And it was something that was really stressful for me because I really used my insurance a lot. It is more expensive now than it was. We do pay more now, but with all of the other benefits of having the business and with the amount that I make, it is actually a better situation that I was in before when I was working at the school. So yeah, it was something to consider, but it was not something that was a deal breaker for me. Now, let's say that you don't have a spouse that has insurance, or like for whatever reason, maybe you're not in a relationship, or maybe you're the one that's providing insurance for your family. That obviously is something you really have to take into account. However, there are still options. I'm going to post a link in the chat here. Let me find a couple things here. There are a couple sites here that will outline. There's some different plans that you can have. There are some from Health Alliance. Disclaimer, I have not used any of these because I am on my husband's insurance, but these are some resources that I know other people have used. So let's see here. There's a couple other ones here. Couple other links that I'm going to share in the chat for you for insurance options. So again, something that is your responsibility, something you have to think about, but doesn't have to be something that keeps you in a situation where you don't feel like you're 100% fulfilled, or that makes you feel like you're holding back on what you really want to do in your life. Last option, or last thing I want to talk about. So we talked about business structure. We talked about insurance. So liability, business, and health. And then the last thing I want to talk about is finances. So this is something I actually really enjoy talking about this, because once it can seem kind of boring a lot of times when people talk about finances. It's like pinching pennies and budgeting, which isn't that exciting. But the thing is that when you have the basic things taken care of, what that allows you to do is, again, frees you up to actually enjoy things, so that when you do spend money on something, when you do treat yourself to something or do something that is strictly for enjoyment, you don't have to feel guilty about it if you know that these other things are taken care of, versus the other way where, you might be spending, thinking, am I spending money I don't have, or should I really be spending this money, etc. So with all that being said, a couple things that I have done to stay on top of my finances as I am as I started my business. The first thing, and this is something that I was really preoccupied with, was retirement. And this is actually something that was brought up by a loved one that was a concern when they found out that I was going to be leaving the school district, or that I was thinking about it. And this person, she's like, well, now you're going to lose your retirement. You're not going to have a retirement plan. And I was like, no, that's not exactly accurate. I am going to have a retirement plan. It's just going to be a different retirement plan. It's not going to be that retirement plan. And actually, that wasn't the case for me. Where it was for me was that I actually called the office. There's usually, if you work for a school district or some organization, there's usually some type of central office that you can call that can give you information about your retirement plan. And so there were actually little things about the way that my schedule worked, that with how my days contributed and things like that, that I actually could have been doing differently, that could have allowed me to actually get more that I didn't know about. So if you are thinking about transitioning out, going to part-time, I would recommend finding some information about your retirement plan, your pension plan, whatever it is for your organization. Just be informed, and be informed if you never intend on leaving. If you just want to have something on the side, but you want to keep the plan and maybe supplement it, just get information, because there might be little things that you could be doing that could actually put you in a better situation. And it's better to know about those things now rather than later. With all of that being said, when I actually called the office from the facility that I worked, what they shared with me was that I actually, because I worked for the district for 14 years. Some of those were part-time, so they only counted as part of a year. I believe like if I worked 80% that year, that would count as 80% of a year. And then the next year I worked 50%, that would count as half of a year. So I think I was there for 14 years. It ended up being like, 13 and, a half or something, maybe a little bit more than that. But anyways, I actually was working there enough. I had to be working 10 years in order to qualify for a pension. So I actually still get a pension from the school district, even though I'm no longer working there. And then I actually qualify for health insurance. So I can start pulling when I'm 60. I can start getting health insurance when I'm 60. So I actually still do get benefits even though I left. So the thing is that you might not actually lose your retirement if you decide to step away from that position. You might get something. Now, the amount that I get every month, I can't pull till I'm 60. If I would have been in for 20 years, I would be able to start pulling when I was 55. And the amount that I get every month is less, but I still get something. So again, that person was uninformed. They were incorrect. I still do get a pension. And so what I've done is that I just have, I talked to my accountant, and then my husband actually has a background in finance as well. And between the two of them, I was able to figure out, okay, now that I'm not employed anymore, I need to be the one contributing to my retirement. So I am just the one responsible for it. So again, kind of like the analogy of living with your parents. Yes, your parents provide you safety and security and resources, but then you have to follow their rules. Same thing with retirement. Yes, your employer a lot of times will contribute to your retirement and provide that for you, but then you have to follow their rules. When you're self-employed, you make your own rules, but then you just have certain things that you have to provide on your own. Same thing with this. I will say that for a lot of people that I know who are self-employed, they say, yeah, I did have a really cushy retirement plan when I was working for whatever the organization was, and I had awesome health insurance, but I end up actually making more now and living a better life now because I figured out how to do this the right way. And it's just, again, once you make those initial decisions about all these things, it's figured out, and then you don't have to worry about it. You just figure out what your routine is and what you're going to do as far as contributing. What I have a Roth IRA. And that's something that you can contribute to. I did that for a couple of years. And now, because there's certain restrictions on that particular plan, and I can only, if I'm going to contribute here, I can't contribute over here. Again, this is why it's important to talk to an accountant or some type of financial expert to give you an idea about what you can do and where you can contribute. I also have a self-employed 401k. So how it works is that I just have these other accounts that are just kind of sitting there, and then, their money's invested. So inflation and things like that, it's growing for me. And then I've just switched over to a self-employed 401k. So again, there's options, and they're pretty easy to set up. You just have to know who to talk to. What I did, I actually use Fidelity. There are other accounts, other places like Vanguard. That's another company. What I did is that I don't actually have somebody. I don't pay for someone to manage my accounts. I just called Fidelity and talked to one of their representatives and set it up myself and take care of all of that on my own. And that way I don't have to pay any additional fees for somebody to manage all of my money. They're actually people from those companies. Again, Vanguard and Fidelity are two good examples. I use Fidelity, but Vanguard I know people that use Vanguard and they're very happy with it. But if you have questions about retirement accounts and which ones which ones would be the best option for you based on your situation, if you are thinking about being self-employed, then those would be a good place to start. So again, call those companies, get on the phone with one of their retirement specialists, and they can answer some questions about what you would need to do, questions that you have, and then also talk to your accountant would be a good person that might be able to give you some advice as far as different options, or that might be able to refer you on to somebody who could help you. So that's what I've done. And really, there were a lot of things that I was stressing about. I know we've talked about a lot of things today. We've talked about establishing your business. We talked about the 3 different types of insurance. And then I've talked about the financial aspect. Again, obviously the biggest thing that you want to think about is how am I going to handle my retirement? So those are the big things. Obviously, there are other things like basic budgeting, but the thing is that you don't want to be, like when you get in the mindset of just, okay, I just got to pay my bills. I've just got to pay my bills. Obviously, you have to pay your bills, but you don't want to be thinking about these things and having these things in place, because that can provide you that security for the long term. What I ended up doing, my husband and I have a system where we have a set amount that goes into the account for bills. We have a set amount that gets contributed to retirement. And then we have a set amount that gets put into everybody's accounts for like vacation funds and things like that. So we've got different layers. So actually my layers are, my husband and I sit down every quarter, because when you are self-employed, you've got to pay taxes every quarter. So what we do is every couple months, we sit down and we look at our finances. We figure out, okay, how much do we need to leave aside for taxes? How much do we put in retirement? And then where do we put the rest of this money? What accounts do we put it in? Like whether it be, like if you've got a car loan or something, if you've got a mortgage, if you've got a vacation fund, whatever. So that's the level that we do. I pay bills every month. There's a set amount that I pay for bills every month, but then every quarter we look at it and do taxes, retirement, and then other big expenditures that we have. So that's how we handle it. So no, I've thrown a lot at you today, but that is how we do it. If you would like some more information about, I know I talked about my planning method. If you want some more information about that, I'd be happy to answer some questions about that, about how we do it, and just the routine that I have. But those are your basics that you have to think about when you are starting a business. Again, none of them are a big deal that need to delay you months and months and months and years and years and years before starting something on the side. But they are just things that you want to have as kind of a checklist in the back of your mind. And once you take care of them, the great thing is that there's just some maintenance that you might have to do in order to make sure that you are up to date and things like that. But the good thing is that there are a lot of resources that are there to support you. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening and tuning in. Let me know if you've got any other questions about the nuts and bolts in finances, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great morning.